Hello, welcome to St. Matthew Lutheran's midweek Lenten devotional, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Hope you love my Irish hat as much as I do. We are continuing to explore the Christ hymn of Philippians 2, and today we're focusing on the phrase, "Every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord." There's an old joke about a man who dies and goes to heaven. He meets St. Peter at the pearly gates, and Peter asks what religion he was on earth. "I was a good Episcopalian man," he says proudly. "Oh, okay, interesting," Peter says. "Follow me to room 15. First, they walk down the hall and pass a room full of Pentecostals, all speaking in tongues together. They continue and pass a room full of Methodists singing Charles Wesley hymns. Next, Peter points out a room of Catholics praying their rosary beads. On the other side of the hall are Russian Orthodox, all gazing at their holy icons. They continue walking, and Peter stops and whispers, "Be quiet now. We're about to pass the Lutherans, and they think they're the only ones here." Depending on which website you check, there's always a different denomination in the punchline. We all seem to think our group is in the right and others are wrong. It's human nature to want to be right, and we want to feel proud of the group we're in. Whether it's your religious beliefs, your country, your political beliefs, even your sports team, there's a certain camaraderie we feel with those who are on our side. The human mind loves to divide people up into us and them. But the early Christians seem to have understood things differently. At least Paul and the ones who wrote this hymn with the words, "Every knee shall bend, every tongue confess." That phrase meant a lot to the early church. It sums up the belief that no matter how lost people are, no matter how much evil or sin or suffering there is in this world, God's love will eventually have the last word. God's love and grace will eventually be so appealing and so transformative that all will confess, all will bow, all will be in right relationship with the divine. These lines of the Christ hymn reflect the belief among the earliest members of the church that one day all creatures will ultimately be united with God. This idea is sometimes called universalism. When asked about universalism, Martin Luther famously said, "God forbid that I should limit the time of acquiring faith to the present life. In the depth of divine mercy, there may be an opportunity to win it in the future." It appears Luther was hesitant to take a strong stance one way or the other, but wanted to leave the door open. It's always been a debated idea in the church, with theologians offering compelling arguments one way or the other. And the Bible itself is full of paradoxical statements on the subject. Theologians from the 2nd and 3rd century, like Origen of Alexandria, to modern theologians like Rob Bell, author of Love Wins, have seen passages like the one we're focusing in on today as evidence that God's love will eventually win over all. That one day every knee will bow, every tongue confess, every heart be united with God. Clearly, God's will is to save and redeem all people. Check out 1 Timothy 2:4 if you don't believe me. So if God's desire is for all people to be saved and redeemed and in right relationship with him, doesn't it make sense that God will stop at nothing to making that happen? Even if it means submitting to sinful human will and suffering death, even death on a cross. So the Christ hymn tells us that the good news is even better than we thought. This really, really good news is what the early church was so excited about, that their Jesus saved the entire world. Not just them, but all people. And not just people, but all creation. Being part of the church wasn't just about being a member of a new religion. It was being ministers of reconciliation on behalf of the entire world. Being a Christian is about celebrating the God of the universe who became incarnate in Jesus Christ to redeem the whole world. So next time we tell that joke about denominations in heaven, maybe we need to include all religions too, and even the non-religious and atheists, because Jesus died for them. Of course, we don't know for sure one way or the other, but today's verse from the Christ hymn speaks to a joyful universalism held by the earliest Christians. A joyful declaration that proclaims a message better than we could ever imagine. Christ humbled himself, became obedient, died a death on the cross, was raised from the dead, and one day all tongues shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen.